Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. It's a nice sunny day, but rainy. I like the rain. It's good. I think I commented that in my conversation with Sam Kelch. It was a rainy day that day as well too, but it's nice.
Oh,
It's nice to
really?
have all the snow mold down.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm allergic to snow mold and it was all like melting the kind of first couple weeks of all this. And I was like, is this allergies? Like, what is this? So I'm happy that that part's gone now because now I don't have to be like, these are allergies, right? These aren't allergies.
Yeah, right on top of everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so again, this is an event series talking to Edmonton event professionals. Maggie, if you don't mind, just explaining a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I am the owner and lead planner for MB&Company. We're an event planning firm here in Edmonton. I specialize, my kind of, I guess, main clients fall both within the arts industry and the tech industry. So I kind of balance between the two, which I was honestly just reading a report that's been done about the tech community because I hadn't had time to kind of get caught up with it until now. And the parallels between the two, I've always kind of known, but reading the report, I was like, if you just took out all the words tech here, I feel like it could be a really similar report for the arts community. So it's kind of cool to see the parallels between the two, because I think sometimes people see them really differently, like see one as an economic driver and the other as like not for whatever reason. And they really are both so similar in terms of economic driving, in terms of especially during this time, like giving people stuff to do in their time, providing a gateway to make things easier, all these, I could talk about that for hours. But so that's kind of the two industries we primarily straddle, but we do have clients in other kind of industries and stuff. We primarily do corporate events, but we're kind of phasing out of the wedding industry right now, but of course with COVID, that might be taking a little bit longer, which is fine. We love the wedding industry. The move had nothing to do with my lack of love for it, because I do love it so much. But more was just a matter of having to prioritize kind of where our focus was.
Huh. Okay, this is great. And what I love about these conversations that I'm having about how each vendor, operator, entrepreneur approaches the event sector differently. And so I think that's very enlightening as well too. So if you could just take the conversation through from the weekend, mid-March, how that unfolded for you.
Yeah, so I refer to March 13th as like COVID D-Day, because but that's probably wrong by one day, because I feel like that was the last like normal day in a weird way. Like I know that we were still watching updates and we knew that something was happening, but I kind of find March 14th was the one where the hammer really dropped. I can't remember the exact dates of everything, but we had a major conference that actually was supposed to be last weekend, and that they officially pulled first. They're a medical conference, so obviously they were, up to speed on things, and there's a little more at stake. And especially when if you remember back into March, there was the Bonspiel and the dental conference in Vancouver that both kind of launched a number of cases within the medical community. So this group was especially eager to kind of make a decision and roll through all of that. And then I had a couple clients who were willing to wait and see, because I remember back in March, like we were like, is this going to be 4 weeks? Is this going to be 6 months? And now we're talking, is it going to be 18 months or 2 years? So the amount of time, we didn't really have a sense back then of exactly how much time it was. So basically we were working with our clients to do kind of a monthly, like month by month approach. So anything, so that was mid-March, anything that was in March was canceled, which luckily we actually had just cleared all of our March events by the time all this happened. And then we got into April and May, where we were starting to tell people to consider the financial impacts of canceling or the financial impacts of holding on. So we did a bunch of financial risk assessments for our clients, because at that point, like I said, we didn't know what the length of time was. We didn't know any of that. So we started looking at, how far can we get that it starts costing us an amount that we can't bear if we cancel, or how much does it cost us right now, and what are kind of the differences within there, and what is our timeline. And then we were telling people in June and July to start preparing to cancel, but really knowing that they have time on their side to look at what is possible as alternatives, what financially needs to be done. And for our wedding clients, we started going like, you might want to start looking at either alternative ways of getting married this year or making plans into 2021. And then we kind of left August out for a while. And then basically each month that happened, we kind of moved that whole process down by a month. And then it just started to become clear that 2020 was likely not going to be able to have any of the events that we had planned. So we started kind of talking to each client who was kind of in the waiting period and making plans. So we had some clients for weddings that were like, we'll hold out as long as we need to. Like, if we can do it this year, we're not too worried about the financial risk. And then Dr. Hinshaw, I guess, I have no sense of time. I'm like a couple of weeks ago, could have been a month ago. I'd have to have like the calendar of Dr. Hinshaw in front of me to remember this, but she did deliver the news that events over 15 people would not be allowed throughout the summer. And so that's kind of when the remainder of our clients pulled the plug and kind of made the decision. So we had 2 clients go virtual. So we work with Bumble, which is a social networking app.
Okay.
And we have moved into sponsorship with them. That program's kind of wrapping up now a little bit. And so instead of doing events created specifically for Bumble, we went into people who were doing virtual events and kind of jumped on their bandwagon, helped them out a little bit, and helped spread the word of Bumble through that. And then Next Fest is actually going online, and we are in the we're in the final sprint of that. It's been amazing to work with that team to bring everything virtually. It has been a little bit of, I've done virtual events before, but never an 11-day festival online.
Wow.
So it's been a little bit of like, not really looking before you go,
Yeah.
Luckily I over budgeted for everything. So we're coming in, things are we're still, it's an emergency. We don't have any extra money for sure, but I was expecting that it would be, way bigger of an expense than it has kind of been coming in, which is kind of the opposite that you usually see with,
Yeah.
especially arts organizations when the funds are so tight. So that's a lot of information. Sorry, I can talk about this stuff forever.
Well, and this is why we're having this conversation. So, and you actually transitioned nicely into the next part of the conversation is how did you pivot? And I'm very interested in specifically just talking about the Next Fest event. Obviously, being in the arts myself, I have a keen interest. So, how are you approaching that? And are you doing it from a venue? Are you broadcasting? Is it from everyone's home? How are you doing that? Like, where's this central hub? That's, I guess, what I'm interested in.
Yeah, so there's 3 parts to this version of Nexus that we came up with when we decided to pivot.
Okay.
And all of them are kind of based in what we would have done in a live person, but we kind of grew some aspects that were supposed to originally be smaller. So the first piece is one-on-one mentorships. So we reached out to emerging artists to find out what they wanted a 1-hour mentorship session. So if you can talk to anyone for an hour, what do you want? And some people had names, some people just had topics. And so once everybody submitted to that, then we looked at what they needed and assigned mentors specifically based on their needs. The cool thing about going virtual is we actually have emerging artists from across Canada, which usually in Nexus setup, we usually serve primarily Albertan artists because we'll have some that are willing to drive to Edmonton.
Yes.
But somebody from Saskatoon, that's a bit of a trek. And we have had it, but it's less possible. Whereas this year we're serving people across all of Canada. We have people in Montreal participating, people in Vancouver. I don't think in any of the territories, but I'd have to kind of double check the postal codes.
Yeah.
So that program is amazing and it's already set up and already running. We're really hoping some like longer term relationships come from that. The second piece is the workshop series, which we always did also. It's meant to bridge the gap between what post-secondary institutions teach and what artists need to, flourish in the real world. So we normally have between like 5 and 10 would be a really big year. And this year, I think we have 16 total. So it's like massive. We grew it because we were like, this is what people have made it clear that they want right now. So let's give it to them. So we're doing an amazing, huge array of stuff. I can send you kind of the website to share afterwards. CBC Edmonton came on board, to help with a podcasting piece. Good Women Dance is talking about integrating dance into art, different forms of art. Mackenzie Brown is talking about relationships with Indigenous artists and how to do land acknowledgements that are also artistic and exciting. Everybody hates the person like holding a piece of paper, pronouncing, different groups wrong. Anyway, I could like list that forever. That's an amazing
it's very
program.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and then the last piece is performance. So every night we have about 4 to 5 hours worth of programming. So normally you'd come in, you'd see one show, and then you'd leave and go to the next show or go get a burger at Next Act or whatever. So this year we're doing 4 to 5 hours of programming all night. So you can kind of tune in whenever you want, tune out whenever you want. It's kind of a bit more of a variety show-esque instead of necessarily the like sit down and watch this piece.
Yes.
So on the technical side of it, most of it is actually pre-recorded.
Okay.
We wanted to ensure that we were able to support the artists to kind of like do their best work, and we weren't worried about internet connections, and we weren't worried about it being 9:30 p.m. and the light in your apartment isn't great, or just a lot of risks in terms of it being live. We still have some live, but it's probably the best setup. That'd be my advice for a lot of people's virtual events, is to really consider pre-recording as much as possible, and then providing some engagement. And then, so in terms of how it's running, we're running it on Twitch, which I think when you talk to a lot of corporate event planners, they're like, on Twitch? Like, like that's the video game software. But, all good event planners know that you go where your audience is, or you don't train your audience to do something if you don't have to. And in our case, our artists and our audience are between 14 and 30 on average, and that's where they already are. So why reinvent the wheel? So I've learned a lot. I didn't know much about Twitch until 2 months ago. So we're learning lots about kind of how to do that. And basically it's the equivalent of running like a TV station, to be honest with you.
Yeah. It becomes broadcast. So are you assembling and editing the video yourself, or do you have a team that's assembling the show?
So the artists are putting together their own videos and submitting them. So I'm actually getting like a million emails right now as they submit them because every time somebody submits a video, it goes, I own the like account basically that they're going through. So I get an email. I woke up this morning with like 37 emails of like different files waiting to be downloaded. So, so they're building most of that. And then we're creating the content that's the through line. So we have a host each night that we're working with to create a bit of a through line through the whole night, just so that it's not like disjointed pieces. The host is able to kind of gather us and bring us back together. And there's some announcements throughout the night and thanking donors and stuff like that.
That's great.
And then we're using an online broadcasting system to basically put all the videos in and then push them out to our Twitch channel. So we have an amazing tech team that like, bless them, because they kind of figured it out. They're theater technicians, right? We're all, it's a not only a theater festival, but that's what it's based in, right? And so bless them, they took the challenge and learned a bunch of stuff. And so, new things are coming up all the time. We're currently in the midst of figuring out so all our artists submitted their work with captioning.
Yes.
And now we're trying to figure out how to caption all the live stuff. So we're working with a captioning team right now to finish that piece. And then I think we mostly have everything kind of lined up and ready to go.
Well, that's perfect. It seems to me that like in time of crisis that people do come together and they fall into what they know best, and that's a bit of a silver lining, is that we're learning new skills, we're learning how to deliver an event service or art, or pretty much everything that kind of encapsulates what we do in a new way. And that is the next question I have, is the silver lining to all of this. How do you see moving forward? Obviously, eventually we're going to find a vaccine. We'll figure out whether this is an annual thing or whether, you know, you get a one-shot deal and it handles that. But when everybody, most of the population is either inoculated because they've had it, or they get a vaccine and we go back to I don't necessarily like new normal, but a normalization of our lives. So we
Yeah,
aren't so
totally.
stressed out and anxious. How do you see what we're doing now dovetailing into, you know, a year, 2, 3 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have the answer. I have some theories. I mean, the cool thing, if you know me, I'm a bit of an accessibility and inclusivity nerd when it comes to live events. I am not perfect at it. I don't claim that my events are the best ones in that regard, but I just find it really interesting, and I try to integrate new pieces and share what we've been learning. And one of the biggest kind of silver linings, I think, of where we're at right now, we have accessibility consultants that we work with, and we met with a number of them leading up to Next Fest because we were like, who are we excluding? Like, what do we not know? Like, how, you know, all these different pieces. And kind of across the board, the statement was that virtual events are actually more accessible. You don't have to leave your house. You don't have to look for childcare. If you're somebody who's anxious in crowds, you can watch it from home. You know, the main piece that is definitely on the top of our minds is there is a socioeconomic barrier. You need to have something that has a screen, more or less. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but like you need to have a device that can use the internet, and then you need to have internet. So for me, what's exciting is that once we're a little bit further along, maybe not all the way along in clearing this out, that's a weird term, but you know what I mean?
Okay, well,
Um,
we're figuring it out.
yeah, like whatever that means. We could do partnerships with, you know, like places like EPL or other businesses that have really strong internet connections, and say, go sit at this cafe and you can use their internet, or you can go to Edmonton Public Libraries and use one of their computers to consume this content. And that supports kind of some of the socioeconomic pieces. But we're really hearing across the board how accessible all of this is, in terms of not creating barriers for people to participate. And
Mm,
so that's really, really exciting to me. Like, and we have 3 accessibility consultants that have totally different life experiences and levels of education, and some of them it's only lived experience, and some of them it's partially lived experience and then partially training, and they were all in unison in that regard. So that really excites me and
yeah.
makes me feel good about the work we're doing right now. In terms of the future, I'm excited to get back to in-person events. I'm taking a certificate program right now in virtual meetings and events, because it obviously is something that we need to, as a company, focus on.
Right.
But I am in this to bring people together. And I think virtual events are doing a good job of creating that bridge right now. But I don't think you can replace being in the same room as people, collisions of ideas, and the generation of like buzz that you can create in person. So
Mhm.
I'm eager to get back, but I'm also nervous because I'm like, what does that look like? You know, people are talking about waivers and people are talking about temperature checks and all these things. And I just think about how I probably wouldn't go to an event if I need to like do all of these kind of different steps.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it'll be hybrid, which we're kind of hearing across the industry, that it would be, you know, half at home and half in person, which again goes back to that accessibility piece, which is amazing.
Yes.
Um, but I don't know. I don't know that I have an answer of like kind of what I think it'll look like, but I am excited to gather again when we can do it
Mm,
and not be fearful. But I think even after we have a vaccine, and even after however we work through all of this and we're on the other side of it, even when we are, I don't know that people will be fully ready and fearless, right? Like there is going to be trauma from all of this. So what that
mhm,
is the events industries needs to respond to that in
mhm.
all the events. But I don't know, maybe it's that people want to wash their hands more, maybe that it's people don't want to hug.
Right.
time will
How
tell.
yeah, yeah, exactly. How people meet socially make change because of it. I really love that accessibility piece. That's something that I hadn't necessarily reflected on, but that's absolutely true. And
Yeah.
um, adjunct to that is that, going back to the Next Fest, how your artists are connecting with other people that wouldn't necessarily have the ability to come to Edmonton, but now these people are able to share on a much, the distances are shortened.
Totally. Yeah. And we've like purposely reached out to emerging arts organizations across the country and said, like, share this with your folks. Like, there's no barrier now. So
That's
it is that to me is the key silver lining is we're just including more people ranging from, folks who use wheelchairs that it's just too much for them to go to something that they're kind of like not sure about, to single moms who getting daycare or getting like evening babysitter or whatever is either too cumbersome financially or just annoying, like to have to arrange all of that all the time. There's these huge kind of vast like array of people that it supports, which I'm just really inspired by.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for sharing your experience with the art and tech sector in the event field. I mean, it's very exciting. It's obviously it's a trying and anxious time as well too, but it seems
Yeah,
very promising. So thank you
totally.
so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's great.